So without further ado, I will hand it over to the Special Representative for the Prairies, Mr. Carr.
Good morning, everyone. Bonjour à tous. C'est un plaisir pour moi d'être ici avec vous ce matin. And I'm talking to you from my home in Winnipeg, which is Treaty 1 territory and the home of the Métis Nation. And I want to especially welcome my friend and colleague, Marie-Claude Bibeau, who has done a wonderful job as our Minister of Agriculture. And I can tell you from sitting around her at the cabinet table that her passion and her advocacy is absolutely inspiring to many of us, including many of us on the prairie. So from my home in the prairie, welcome, Marie-Claude. We called this press conference to provide an update on the AgriStability file. Many have been asking us about the progress on this very important file and the federal government's offer to enhance AgriStability to $170 million nationally. COVID-19 has caused a world of stress and unpredictability for farmers, as well, of course, as it has for our frontline workers. Livestock producers faced backlogs because plants closed. Horticultural producers faced labor challenges, and others faced surplus products. Restaurants have closed. Despite the pressures, farmers have stepped up and adjusted remarkably well. Grain farmers on the prairies and across Canada have benefited from high prices, and that's helped push net farm income into record territory. Canadian farmers earned a 10% increase in the value of our food exports to $74 billion, closing in on our goal of $75 billion by 2025. Many challenges remain. There will always be unpredictability in markets, and farmers face a whole new set of risks, from a changing climate to changing consumer preferences and to punitive action by trading partners. So we're pushing forward with short-term fixes to the AgriStability program. Last week, I met with the Saskatchewan Association of Rural Municipalities at their annual convention and encouraged them to continue engaging on this file. And it's a message shared with the Canadian Crop Convention and that Minister Bibeau reinforced with the Keystone agricultural producers. These changes are still on the tables of our friends in prairie governments. We know farmers across the country have been asking for this for a long time at every levels of government. The Agricultural Producers Association of Saskatchewan shared examples of how the changes could benefit average farmers. One of those examples showed that a 2,000-acre grain farmer would have received $4,000 under the current program, $75,000 under the improved one. The budgetary implications of these changes are larger for the prairie provinces. Prairie farmers, the federal government's 60%, will help most in the prairies. Prairie farmers are proud of their importance to Canada and to our way of life. I see these changes as an investment in their success, in our success. This is a step forward. We will continue to advocate for farmers in the short term. They will lay the foundations for longer term improvements under our 5-year cost shared frameworks with the provinces and with the territories. I would now like to turn the mic over to my colleague, Minister Bibeau.
Merci, Jim. Thank you, Minister Carr. I would like also to acknowledge that I'm from home in Sherbrooke in the Eastern Townships in Quebec, which is a traditional territory of the Abenaki people and the Federation of Wabanaki people. Jim, you are a tireless advocate for prairie farmers, and your engagement and advice is always hugely appreciated. Bonjour, bonjour à tous et merci de vous joindre à nous aujourd'hui. As Minister Carr said, we convened this press conference today to provide an update on our government's proposed short-term changes to the AgriStability program. As many of you know, on November 27th, the federal government proposed to eliminate the reference margin limit and boost the compensation rate to 80%. Taken together, these proposed changes could lead to an increased payout from AgriStability of 50% or $170 million nationally into the pockets of the farmers who need it most. It has been just over 110 days since we made this offer to the provinces. We have received positive responses from almost all other provinces in Canada. But in order to enact these changes, we are still awaiting a clear response from all three prairie provinces. We need a strong consensus to include the prairie that we need a strong consensus that includes the prairies if we are going to move forward with these changes that farmers have been asking for. And we are anxious to know, have prairie agriculture ministers taking the proposal to their cabinet and to their premiers? Are they supportive of these changes? Presque toutes les autres provinces ont répondu positivement à notre proposition de changement AgriStabilité. Nous avons besoin d'un consensus solide incluant les prairies si nous voulons aller de l'avant avec ces changements que les agriculteurs réclament. Et nous avons hâte de savoir, est-ce que les ministres de l'Agriculture des Prairies ont présenté la proposition à leur Conseil des ministres et à leur Premier ministre? Et est-ce qu'ils soutiennent ces changements? The deadline to enroll in AgriStability for this coming year is April 30th. We need to implement these changes in advance of that deadline in order to encourage more farmers to sign up and increase farmer participation in the program. I just marked my second anniversary as Federal Agriculture Minister, and I can say if there has been one consistent request in those 2 years, it has been the need to improve AgriStability. From my continuing discussions with prairie ministers, I know how much they too want to improve our business risk management programs, and they understand the shortcomings of AgriStability for farmers today. Discussions have started on the next 5-year agricultural policy framework, which begins in 2023. Through the consultation process, we will look at longer-term changes. However, consultations on longer-term fixes to the BRM suite of programs should not come at the expense of the short-term fixes to AgriStability that farmers are asking for today. At the request of prairie ministers, I will convene a further FPT conference. To ensure this is a productive conference and that we can provide much needed results for farmers, I would prefer they have a decision in hand. We have had many discussions. Canadian farmers want us to act. Farmers stepped up in a big way this past year, and they faced a lot of stress. While we have seen record prices for grains, livestock producers haven't had it as good. We are continuing to help them to deal with backlogs. An improved AgriStability program would be a big help to livestock producers who are coming off a difficult year in 2020. As I said following our meeting with ministers on November 27th, we are ready to deliver for farmers who continue to deliver for Canadians. Thank you.
Thank you very much, ministers. We'll now be going to question period. So for members of the media, as I said earlier, if you have a question, please don't hesitate to make yourself known by writing down your media affiliation and name in the chat at the bottom right of your screen. Donc, on va maintenant passer à la période de questions pour les médias qui sont parmi nous aujourd'hui. Surtout, n'hésitez pas à écrire votre affiliation médiatique et votre nom dans la messagerie en bas à droite de votre écran pour poser une question. We'll begin with a question from Bill Graveland at the Canadian Press.
Thanks very much. Ministers, I'm just a little curious why you would have a news conference like this when you're still trying to convince the three provinces to come on board. Is it just an effort to put pressure on them to make a decision?
Well, I would say that the media, the stakeholders, the many producer associations are calling on us every day to make these changes happen. And since you were asking for an update on the situation, I just wanted to, remind everyone that our proposal is still on the table. I really look forward to have the Prairie joining so we can have all Canadian farmers benefit from that. And it's really time to do it because April 30th is coming very soon. So this is why we wanted, and also to tell you that I'm responding to my colleagues, the Prairie ministers, with organizing an FPT meeting, but I really expect them to come to the table with the authority to move forward.
But it seems a little bit undiplomatic to agree to a meeting with the three ag ministers, but just basically tell them you want a yes or no. I mean, how do you think that's going to end up?
Well, I hope we will be able to move forward with the proposal. The proposal is divided in two parts. So at the very least, I hope we will get very soon a consensus on removing the reference margin limit. But obviously, I hope they will also join for increasing the compensation rate.
Thank you, Minister, and thank you, Bill. We'll now go over to David Fraser from the Western Producer.
Thanks for taking the time again today. When is that meeting with your colleagues that you're agreeing to? When will that take place? And when was the last time that you actually spoke to your counterparts on the prairies?
We are trying to organize the meeting right now, so it's a matter of fixing the agenda of the 14 ministers. So it will be hopefully next week, but maybe the week after that. I can't tell you yet. And I've spoken with my three Prairie colleagues individually, I would say in the last 3 weeks or so.
Follow up, David? Okay, thank you. We'll now go over to Karen Briere from the Western Producer. In fact, she wrote her question in the chat, so I'll just read it out. Is there a date for the meeting? That would be the first question. And would that be the deadline for the Prairie provinces?
We are trying to set the date, as I said. I mean, we have to move before to make it happen for this year, and the deadline for the program is April 30th. So obviously, it's not a take it or leave it on this date. Obviously, I really want it to happen. I know how much the farmers are expecting significant improvement to AgriStability. It's definitely their priority. It is our priority. It's been said by all the agriculture ministers during our 22 meetings last year that it was a priority to fix AgriStability. So I really want to make it happen, and I will keep the offer on the table. But I mean, it's time to act.
Thank you. And in fact, I see that David Fraser did want a follow-up question, so we'll just go back to him. His audio had muted.
Yeah, hey, sorry, Minister, just a little tech trouble there. I'm actually hoping to get a sense of what role Mr. Carr plays in all this. Why is he now being brought on board to assist in this effort? And Minister Bibeau, I'm wondering if he's coming at your request or if he's being brought on board at the request of somebody else to assist you with this.
I would say he has always been there. I always turn to my colleagues in different regions of the country, but Minister Carr is obviously a very strong advocate. He is in the region. He speaks with the farmers and the people in the region. So it's very important for me to hear from him. And maybe Minister Carr would like to add something to it.
Well, I spend all day in front of this screen and no time at all on airplanes. This is the new world. But I can cover an awful lot of ground on this screen, and I have. Uh, Really, every nook and cranny of the prairies are available, and you can cover an awful lot of conversation in a very short period of time. And the message that I have been getting from producers right across the prairie is that AgriStability is a good program for them. We have been spending an awful lot of time talking to associations, producers. They believe that this program is in their interests. They understand that the federal government had to work hard to free up this extra capital, and that now it's time for the provinces to indicate to us whether or not they're on board. I've had conversations with ministers within all of the prairie governments, encouraging them to talk to their ministers of agriculture and finance and to their premiers and to the constituent groups, who are the most important ones of all. This is who the program is for and why. And I think Minister Bibeau has done a very good job of explaining the impact of the program and why it's important. My role is to reinforce the message and continue the conversation with both ears open to producer groups, who, after all, are the most important people of all this morning.
Thank you, Minister. We'll now go to Diego Flamini from farms.com. So he says, he asks, are the prairie provinces the only ones you, Minister Bibeau, are waiting on, or are there others as well? Oh, Minister Bibeau, you're on mute, I'm afraid.
Sorry. The way the program works is that we need two-thirds of the provinces to join to make any significant changes to the program. And the weight of the province is based on the level of participation of their producers. So in saying in an other way, we need 2 of the 3 provinces to join to make it happen for the whole country. So this is the way it works.
Thank you. Diego, did you have a follow-up? Perhaps we can circle back. We'll now go to Neil Billinger from CJWW Radio in Saskatoon. Neil Billinger, are you still with us? Okay, well, we can circle back. We'll go to Kevin Hirsch of Hirsch Consulting and Communications.
Thanks very much for the opportunity. I'm just wondering if the federal government has considered going it alone in the provinces where the participation is lacking. The 60% of the increased opportunity could still be provided by the federal government. And in provinces where the 40% was available from the province, producers would obviously get more, but at least then the 60% of the increase in value from the feds could be available to producers across the country in that manner. Wondering if that's being considered at all.
Well, we have used this approach with Agri-Recovery because, in this emergency situation with COVID, this is not the way the program is organized. So where I stand right now is really that agriculture is a shared responsibility. A 60-40 cost share is a fair share, and I look forward to have other provinces join on this basis.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hirsch. I will now go over to Spencer Kemp-Boulay from World Spectator. So he asks, are there any plans to find a compromise if the prairie provinces do not accept the proposed changes? So similar to the previous question.
Yes, and maybe I can bring an additional precision to the previous question in this one. Actually, removing the reference margin limit cannot be done in part. It really has to be done at 100% or not at all. So there cannot, technically, realistically, we cannot make a compromise on removing the reference margin limit. For the compensation rate, it's technically feasible, but it's not on the table yet.
Thank you. And we'll now go over to Dean Thorpe from CFCW Edmonton. I think you might have answered that question already, but what if the prairie ministers refuse the offer? What happens then?
Well, I would like them to say so. So then I can see if there's other option, but I can tell you that I will do everything in my power to make it happen. And I believe it's not fair to deprive the farmers of the country from this important increase. And that having a part of the country who's depriving the other part is not fair, but in the same time, I don't know how to say, but I really want to make it happen for everyone. So this is why I'm insisting so much on having the prairie on board.
Thank you. We'll circle back to Diego Flamini from farms.com. Minister Bibeau mentioned April 30th as the enrollment date deadline for AgriStability. What happens if there's no consensus by then?
It will be the status quo. That would be very unfortunate.
Thank you. We'll now go over to Sean Haney from Real Agriculture. So
Minister, oh, go ahead. Thanks, John Sebastian. Sorry about that. Minister, we've had a series of softer deadlines, end of last year, another one in January. Is today's mention of April 30th, is that actually a hard deadline as we've blown through these past softer deadlines?
Well, I would like to have a clear answer. If it's no, it's no. I hope it's going to be yes. So we know where we stand, and we know if we have to find other alternatives to support our farmers. But I mean, the farmers are. The season is coming. And farmers are taking very important decisions right now. And it's a matter of food security in our country. We want our farmers to feel safe, to feel that their governments have their back and that they can proceed and plant what is in the best of interest of our country. And it is now that we have to give them this reassurance that we have their back.
Follow up, Sean?
Yeah, I think I'm good. I'll ask one more actually while I'm here. Are you aware if any of those three prairie provinces have submitted requests to their treasury departments, or has there been any clarity or updates provided to you in terms of the requests for further funding?
No clarity.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll now circle back to Neil Billinger, and I'm trying to recall, from CJWW Radio Saskatoon. Is there any room for compromise on the 60-40 split? You've alluded to that earlier. And do you think the prairie provinces are concerned about future liability? Though, Neil, you might have to expand on what you mean by future liability. Okay, well, so what he means by future liability, Will this cost prairie provinces more in 2021 and 2022?
Well, the way the program works, it's a cost share of 60-40, 60 for the federal, 40 for the provinces. And it's based obviously on the participation of the farmers of their province. Overall, it's an increase in financing. It's an average, obviously, because it's kind of an insurance program. We never know the exact amount, but based on the experience, it will represent an increase of about $100 million a year for the federal and $70 million a year for all the provinces together.
Thank you. So we'll circle back to Kevin Hirsch. If agreement cannot be reached on AgriStability enhancement, what's the likelihood of an agreement on programming starting in 2023?
For 2023, we have to review the whole Canadian Partnership Agreement. And it's kind of not starting over, obviously, because we have a long experience, but we are committed to look at the full suite of business management programs, so including the 4 major programs: AgriStability, Agri-Recovery, Agri-Insurance, and Agri-Invest, mainly. So we will have conversation around them. And actually, we've done quite a bit of work to get to the point where we say AgriStability is the priority and are the best improvement we can bring to this program right away, because farmers shouldn't have to wait for 2 more years. So I think it's an overall approach, it's an overall budget that can be redistributed differently through the different programs. And obviously, we will all be looking for additional budget, but it's complete separate negotiation.
Very good, thank you.
Whatever you don't want is fine with me. Okay.
So I'm just going to ask to make sure everyone that you're on mute. Thank you. And I think that about wraps it up for the questions that we have now. I'll just say one more time, if anybody else that hasn't asked a question yet would like to, please don't hesitate. I do see that Sean Haney from realagriculture.com has another question. So perhaps we can wrap it up with a question from Sean.
Okay, thanks, John Sebastian. Minister Carr, question for you. Have you had conversations about this file with Premier Kenney, Premier Pallister, or Premier Moe to try to encourage them to look at the offer that's as presented?
No, I've had conversations with ministers in all 3 prairie governments, encouraging them to chat with their colleagues. But again, no clarity in response. And that's the reason that we're having this conversation with you today. We need that clarity. We want to move forward. So the answer to your question is not the premiers, but a variety of ministers.
Agriculture ministers or the finance ministers?
Other ministers with whom I've developed a relationship over these many, many months across the prairie, who have then, in their own way and with their own style, had conversations within their governments. But as I've said, and as Minister Bibeau has said, we don't yet know for sure which way they're going to end up on this issue. We're strongly encouraging them, as are so many of the producer groups across the country and across the prairie, to do what's best for our farmers. The federal government has stepped up, and we're very keen to join arms with our prairie brothers and sisters so we can move this file together for Canada and for our farmers.
Thank you, Minister. So that'll conclude today's press conference. I just want to again thank the stakeholders who joined us on the line today, as well as reporters. Your presence is very much appreciated. If you have any follow-up questions for stakeholders, as I've said earlier, we remain at your disposal, and for members of the media, I remain at your disposal. My name, email, phone number will be on the statements that should have been that was published at 11 at the bottom of that statement. Donc, Encore une fois, merci beaucoup de vous être joint à nous aujourd'hui, intervenants, membres, journalistes. Votre présence est très appréciée. Si vous avez des suivis, n'hésitez pas à le faire avec notre équipe. Je vous remercie encore une fois. So, to all, a very good day. Thanks for being here.